So, guys, I do want to talk about AEW tonight, and what I really want to say was that was a really excellent show. I really appreciate like the first hour; it was really strong, and then the last hour was really weak. And what I also like about AEW is that they're doing a lot of continuity. You started with MJF's promo, then Will Ospreay responds to the promo. You do the Owen Hart match with Bryan Danielson. Swerve Strickland comes down, and I've complained about Swerve Strickland not starting the show, but this situation it made it work and everything like that. And then I felt like after that the show was like a little rushed and disorganized, and it ultimately went from something really strong to something just very very disorganized. And I actually understand why they had Bryan Danielson versus Adam Page at the beginning, because they obviously wanted to create a situation where if they went a little longer, they had a Dave Meltzer type of match. They got all the time that they got, and then everything got a little rushed after that. So I do want to start. I do want to talk about the show. It opened with a video package of Collision MJF promo. I like them starting with promos because it gives you context and it elicits an emotion, really. So I'm okay with that. Ospreay comes out, so I like that continuity. And then Ospreay says a couple of things. He puts over Daniel Garcia. He says MJF is attacking Daniel Garcia because of his growing popularity. MJF has insecurities. MJF says that Ospreay says that he has ADHD and MJF has ADHD, but he says that because he has a mental illness as well, doesn't give Ospreay the excuse to be a prick, and MJF should just learn that for himself. He also says that Tony Khan spent money on me because I elevate AEW. The bidding war 24. You've done nothing but bring AEW down. And then the other thing is that Will Ospreay says he's cleaning up his mess, and he said the scumbag is the same old shit. It's been the same old shit for 5 years. Ospreay does a really great job. He really is addressing all the criticisms we say about MJF. Like the whole thing about what if you're talking about the big war 2024, I'm gonna talk in Triple H or whatever. Then go, because obviously it shows you don't care about the company, and it's not that edgy when you do it so many times, really. It becomes the Conway Twitty gag or the 9/11 jokes in Family Guy. You ultimately, if you're saying, I want to join WWE, I'm talking to Hunter, it's shocking, but you do that so many times, MJF, it's boring. And I also like that whole thing about the mental illness stuff, because obviously it makes it more real. As somebody who has suffered from mental health issues, like I respond to trauma poorly. These are things that I've learned, that just because you have a mental health issue does not mean you have every right to be an asshole. Because, I work in a psych ward, I can clean the whole psych ward, make it nice and clean for everybody. Somebody can have a bad day and just be throwing shit and trashing it. And then they get pinned down and then they get medicated. And that's that, really, because they have no right to be dangerous or an asshole, So I like that Ospreay says that, because that's a very topical issue, because we do live in a world where we give people with mental illness excuses, and some people raise their children that way. That's not every situation, but that seems to be becoming the status quo. So I like how that's very topical. I also like that whole thing about, yes, obviously you ask yourself, what has MJF done for AEW? He was definitely a breath of fresh air. After you kind of saw a lot of WWE guys come in, and he was a breath of fresh air, but you saw what happened last year. One of the reasons why they went down the ratings was because of the Cole and MJF thing, and then they decided to interject comedy. So, Ospreay does a great job of addressing the MJF criticisms. Obviously these are very true, and definitely if I was to do a video of like the top 5 things that MJF has done to elevate AEW and the top 5 things that MJF has done to hurt AEW, I think that's a video I would love to do for you guys. MJF then speaks. He says, okay, well, Ospreay, you are replaceable. You're a great wrestler. But he said, you're great wrestlers, and these Dave Meltzer types of wrestlers, they come and go. And I also like that, too, because obviously he's pointing out the criticisms about Will Ospreay, that, obviously, it doesn't take that much to find a wrestler in Japan that does like the Dave Meltzer, style, which is, high endurance, very dangerous moves, very thrilling, very exciting, and goes on for like 30, 40 minutes, really, So obviously, he's right, and then when a Western audience gets exposed to that, eventually loses its luster, really. So I like how they're both really hitting at the nerve of the criticisms about them. They're almost just like in South Park. They're really just hitting like what people say about them. So I really like that. Like realism, but also it's just very tongue. It's very just gritty. Because that those are true. So and then the next thing that happened was Bryan Danielson versus Adam Page. So I said to myself, Jeff Jarrett has been a heel. He's been with Satin Sting and Jay Lethal. So what's going to happen is Jeff Jarrett going to portray Bryan Danielson, and then you're going to see like a Jeff Jarrett, like the Blackpool Combat Club versus Jeff Jarrett's faction feud, or are you going to do something else where Jeff Jarrett screws over Adam Page, and then you see a Jeff Jarrett Adam Page feud? Because those are things that happen. You don't know Jeff Jarrett really, but it's a little interesting to see him be a babyface because he's also a wrestler that receives a lot of criticism for just being an egomaniac and all that. Bryan Danielson versus Adam Page. Adam Page hits Bryan Danielson with a bunch of right hooks and kicks him a couple of times at the beginning. Once again, Adam Page is being a brawler, and then later on in the match, he kind of transitions into a more like, I want to win this by any means necessary, even if it means I have to do technical wrestling and other stuff, just because, obviously, and if you're not thinking and you're just doing move after move, really, eventually you're going to put yourself in a disadvantage. Bryan Danielson hits him with a single leg drop. Bryan Danielson does a top rope drop kick. Adam Page beats and bloodies Bryan Danielson against the ring steps. Adam Page does a sleeper swing hold. Adam Page does knife edge chops. Bryan Danielson does a cross arm breaker and label lock. Bryan Danielson does a spider German suplex off the second rope. He really needs to put that in his arsenal. This is the first time I saw him do something like that. Adam Page does a crossfade submission. Adam Page does a moonsault attempt into a pile driver. Very awesome. Bryan Danielson does a springboard front flip off the top rope. Adam Page does the pile driver on the floor to Bryan Danielson. Really great selling of Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson does a psycho knee. I was asking myself, in the beginning, why is Willow and Mariah May main eventing the show? That's really stupid. And they shouldn't have done that because this match should have main evented. But I understand why they did that. It's just because, if they go long, it's good to catch that on Dynamite. Instead of just being like having, because they can't always do runovers, and actually runovers has been an issue with AEW, really, so I understand why they chose to have this match at the beginning of the show. Bryan Danielson accidentally bumps into the referee, and then Adam Page uses this as an opportunity to hit Bryan Danielson with the belt. Jeff Jarrett takes a while getting to the ring, and it's like, isn't he the special enforcer? Adam Page shows Jeff Jarrett, and he's been antagonizing him a bunch of times. They reveal that Jeff Jarrett's actually a special guest referee. Enforcer usually means somebody's in the match just to make sure no BS goes down, but now he's a special guest referee, so it was a good turn. And one thing that I liked about this is that they actually had a bit of a back and forth for a while, just because if you have Jeff Jarrett be a referee and then Adam Page gets pinned, it feels a little too WCW or TNA wrestling. You got to kind of show that, okay, that's not why Bryan Danielson won. Adam Page could possibly win this. Adam Page hits the Deadeye. Adam Page hits the buckshot lariat crossface. Adam Page hits crossface again. Bryan Danielson counters Adam Page submission with a difficult. Bryan Danielson counters Adam Page's submission with a pinfall that's a little hard to get out of. And so this was a great 50-50 match. Adam Page is a great brawler, and I like how he transitioned into a more formal style, but also a very hard-hitting style. Bryan Danielson had a great technical style, and showing that he was overcoming an opponent that just was ruthless. And I'm happy that they're doing this because Swerve versus Bryan Danielson will be a great match. Adam Page versus Swerve, we've seen this so many times. The next other issue is, as I've said in another video, if you have the main event and they have a bloody Texas death match type of thing, that's not a good look for AEW. It's good to have those matches, but if it's main eventing all your shows, it feels like, is this GCW or is this Combat Zone Wrestling? And, there's a lot of kids in the audience, so it may not be a good... it may show that this is more adult than actually a family company, because you kind of need to be like, AEW needs to be like an edgy PG-13. But WWE is more kind of like it's still like more PG era. They're trying to be a little bit more edgy, but they're still very PG era. So I think that this avoids a Swerve versus Adam Page match, and like I've said before, that eventually gets to a point where it gets a little too repetitive. They've already had a bunch of matches now. Swerve and Adam Page are both in the Blood and Guts match. So what are you trying to do? You can't have Swerve versus Adam Page 5 or 6 or 7. So this was the right call. I knew that this was going to happen. Bryan Danielson is a great box office draw. So obviously him headlining and winning this was the best choice. Swerve comes out and does a promo. It would have been better because what happens is that Bryan Danielson's still in the ring. Swerve comes down. They cut to commercial break, and then Bryan Danielson's not there. So I wish that they kind of had to look at each other, and then Bryan Danielson went backstage. That would have been a little bit better. It looked like Bryan Danielson stepped on a teleporter button. Swerve is in Blood and Guts. Now it's Swerve with Mark Briscoe. And I like that what he said. He said something about like Will Ospreay. He said Will Ospreay hasn't done two things, which is Bryan Danielson hasn't done two things, which is he hasn't beaten Will Ospreay and he hasn't led a group of people to beat the Elite, and he's going to do that in Blood and Guts, really. So, and he's also saying that it's going to be Bryan Danielson's final match. So I like how he's kind of like talking about his upper hand, like his accomplishments, because he doesn't really get that much shine really. Because they really put the shine on Ospreay and the EVPs, and also the young and also MJF really. So I really think that I like how he's trying to remind us of his resume. So that's really good. I also will say that as well, really, that I'm a little worried if what happens if they use this as an opportunity to hurt Swerve, or what happens if Swerve gets hurt in this match. What's going to happen to what's going to be the main event? You might do Adam Page versus Bryan Danielson too, really. So it's a little interesting to see what's going to happen to Blood and Guts. They did the Acclaim did a music video, and I was very mad about this for many reasons. This was a great music video. This was very funny, but if you want to get more viewers, you want more people to watch the show, why in the F-bomb do you not advertise this? Because this is what people want to see. You need to advertise this, and stuff like this. We have a rap from the Acclaim. The Acclaim has a new music video. The next thing that I'll point out is later on in the show, Adam Page talks to the Young Bucks. Wouldn't the Young Bucks be mad about this? Don't they retaliate every single time somebody disses them? It's the continuity is not good, and also not selling this. And then also too, when you have something like this, you need to cut to the crowd. You need to have maybe the Young Bucks out in the ring react to this, or the Acclaim saying we got a new music video we want to present to everybody. Then everybody's cheering them as they're in the ring. They're all watching, and then they end it with their their pitch or whatever. That's the way to do this. So I think this was where they were rushing through the show, really. But you have to advertise the Acclaim music videos. This is something that they do very well. It attracts viewers. You have to market it. You have to transition well. You could even do something like you could have had. How I would have done this is that you would have the Acclaim come out, present a music video, and said, we got special permission from Tony Khan to be out here. We're gonna show our video. We told Tony this is gonna boost the ratings. The Young Bucks, and nobody can interfere in cutting it off, really. They show the rap. It's funny, and then they actually said, we're also in Blood and Guts, or the EVPs come down and said, we're forcing you to be in Blood and Guts on Team AEW, for what you did, or else you're fired. That's what they should have done. That's what they should have done. But they didn't do that. So like I said, when you rush through these things, it's not good. And when you do things very well, like your first hour, and then you do the rest of the show, and it's all muddled and thrown together, it's still a bad show, really. It's like, as I said, it's like having a great appetizer, a great salad, and then the main course is all rushed out, really. The next match was Samoa Joe versus Chris Jericho in a Stadium Stampede street fight. This is one of the best street fights that they ever had. Samoa Joe does a vicious rope dive onto Brian Keith. Chris Jericho hits him with chair shots. He gets a great reaction from the crowds. A lot of people are behind Chris Jericho. He has a bag of horseshoes. Chris Jericho gets dropped onto the horseshoes. Joe follows that up with a senton. Chris Jericho hits the walls of Jericho's. I'm surprised that they took a very long time to start fighting in the arena, and they also did something where they didn't do a backstage thing where they're fighting in the concession stands, because they've done that many times. And I'm also happy that they're not fighting in the arena. They did a little bit, but they didn't do as much as they used to. And I'm also happy that they kind of taken a break from fighting in the arena a lot, because as I said, if you do that too much, or you spend like 20 or 30 minutes in it, or you spend like 10 minutes, like 5 to 10 minutes in it, or what feels like a long duration, it feels a little repetitive, really. So I'm happy that they chose not to just overdo fighting in the arena. I mean, fighting in the crowd stand. They do it too much. They need to take a break from this. But I'm happy that they're in there a very small time. And they go back into the ring. Chris Jericho hits a middle rope drop kick. They take a while and they fight back into the crowd. They get to the backstage area. Chris Jericho throws coffee into Samoa Joe's face. Big Bill and Brian Keith tag team and beat on Samoa Joe. I was a little concerned, like, shouldn't Shibata be there? Because I know Hook is, what did they say? Like, Hook is Taz's band. Hook is injured. What about Shibata? You have to kind of cover up all plot holes. So, like, I know I'm being a little Jim Cornette, but cover up all your plot holes. Chris Jericho puts Samoa Joe on a forklift, and they send Samoa Joe through a wall, and then they mentioned that a doctor stopped the match. So I'm a little happy. So I'm very happy with this, because this was very minimalistic, meaning that this wasn't like long, this wasn't drawn out, this wasn't a little cartoony where they're getting on a forklift and they're doing a move off of that like they did with Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara. This wasn't like them spending so much time in the crowds, because they would do that. They do that a little too much. They tried to be a little different in this. This was ultimately to get to the forklift spot and then end it. And then also with the doctor cutting Samoa Joe off, I think that that's the best call, really, because nobody expected that, and that's a little different. But I also, as I said, like, where is Shibata, really? And the right person won this, So let's see what happens. And this is also a sad reminder to all you guys, this is why the trios division could be really big in the AEW. Imagine if you had the Learning Tree versus Team Joe versus the Patriarch versus the Bang Bang Scissor Gang versus the EVPs. Look at all these great trios team that you have right now, and there's really no direction. That should be another video for you guys. The next match was Tomohiro Ishii versus Kyle Fletcher versus Cesaro versus Pac. Pac hits a Hurricane Run on Kyle Fletcher. Claudio does a gut wrench on Ishii. Claudio does a top roach dive onto everyone. Claudio tosses Pac into an uppercut. I'm sorry, I know I say Claudio and Cesaro, but I know it's Claudio now. Claudio does a big swing on Kyle Fletcher and a sharpshooter. Pac, Ishii, and Claudio exchange German suplexes. Pac hits a black arrow and a submission on Kyle Fletcher. And then it's going to be Pac versus the winner of MJF versus Will Ospreay for the international title. And then there's a couple of things that I need to say about that. That, first of all, I'm happy that Pac did a promo saying that he wants his Wembley Stadium moment, because obviously that is a huge sign of, just, okay, they're treating it like a big deal. This is like their WrestleMania. They're going to be in front of like tens of thousands of people. So, why would you want to do something? Why would they not want to be like, I want my moment, or I was injured, I didn't get it last year, I need to be in this to show that I'm actually, worth a damn, or show that I'm worth a damn, for two reasons. Tony Khan's paying me a lot of money, but also they just have to, like every wrestler wants to be on WrestleMania. You're in history when you do that. If you're at the Wembley Stadium show, you're a part of history, really. So you obviously have to just, they have to really care about that. And I'm happy that Pac really is starting that trend, really, because if he doesn't care about it, then, why the F would you want to be there? Would you want to be in the biggest show? So I'm happy that he did this. I was mad that Kyle Fletcher was a jobber in this match, because it shows what I said about the Don Callis family. They always lose the plot, So Takeshita's always going to lose. If Tony Khan wants somebody else over, Kyle Fletcher's always going to lose. Hobbs is always going to lose. They're gonna win when it's outside of a plot element. That's when they win. They're undefeated until there's a plot element. They lose the plot armor. So again, it makes me kind of wonder, what are you going to do with what are you going to do with the Don Callis family? I think Don Callis is a great manager, but as I said, they go from having some momentum to being Team Rocket, where they always lose a little too much. I really think they need to do a little bit more at just protecting them and giving them a feud in a direction, really. So it's a little unfortunate that they don't have that. Imagine if you had the Patriarch versus the Don Callis family. Christian Cage versus Don Callis. And Don Callis talking about his father was being abusive to him. That could be something. Again, Trios division. What about Takeshita, who wants to face Okada? What will happen if they have a rivalry with the Elite? And not really or what would happen if they just had the match and Takeshita's the heel, Takeshita's the baby face, and Okada's the heel, and then they're cool with each other, and then there's a time where Takeshita and the Don Callis family backs the Acclaimed, and then they betray the Acclaimed, and then it's revealed that the EVPs and the Don Callis family are all together, really. There's so many things that they can kind of do with the Don Callis family, but it's definitely being underutilized. And I think that'd make a great video talk about the underutilization of the Don Callis family. So the next thing that I want to say is the main event was Mariah May versus Willow. This was like the worst match on the card. The crowd was very dead for this. Willow does a senton on the floor. Mariah May does a Hurricane Rana. Stokely halfway and Chris Statlander distract Willow. I also like this a lot in AEW. When somebody's distracting somebody, that can end a match really quickly, and sometimes it does that, and sometimes a wrestler can overcome that situation and actually win and persevere, or they go on for a while, so they realize that they were distracted, but when the pinfall happens, it was because the other person was able to fight them after they recovered from a distraction, really. This isn't like TNA wrestling where there's too many times where somebody causes a distraction and then it leads to a pinfall, because if you do that way too many times, it kills the match, really. But as I've said, and I need to do a video about this, that I think Mariah May is not a good champion. Mariah May versus Toni Storm is a bad idea. I understand she's getting it because she's from London, and then also I think there's a lot of people who like this Toni Storm thing, but I do think the Toni Storm, just Hollywood starlet thing, it has to end. Willow Nightingale should be the next champion because she represents a more hardcore, more ruthless style of wrestling, really. I think that Toni Storm has kind of run her purpose, and the problem is that if you have Mariah May beat her, it's probably going to be a continuation of a silly comedy for the women's division. For the TBS championship is the serious title, but the women's championship is the joke title. So I just I don't think that that's a good call. I also think it's a little insulting because Toni Storm because Willow has kind of been like the woman wrestler of the year, in my opinion. She's had a lot of great matches. She's done a lot of really great things. She's improved her offense. She can do like flips and other things like that with her size. She's talked about body positivity. She's really, to me, I think she's a really, really big star, really. And I don't think that AEW is utilizing her to her best ability. And as I said, I think that if WWE is going to give her a call, go to WWE, really. I think there's a lot that Willow can do. But if she's kind of like a backstory, or this leads to Chris Statlander versus Willow, and I think they're going to have Chris Statlander versus Willow in a hardcore street fight match at Wembley Stadium. But I think that what's going to happen to Willow is that they're kind of like, she's spinning her wheels, really. They really have to kind of do something with her. And if Willow thinks it's too repetitive, like, I'm going to tell her, baby, you got to go to fucking WWE, because, she has a lot of potential. And she's being wasted, really. If she's not going towards an AEW women's championship. So I hope that maybe by the end of the year, maybe World's End, Willow can be the women's champion in AEW. And if she does not have that by the end of this year, I would tell her that when your contract's up, go to WWE, go to NXT, because she is a real talent. And for the WWE product, I think that she would do a lot better, really. I think with AEW, she's kind of she needs to be pushed forward, and if she's not pushed forward, she has to do something else. Just like with Jade Cargill. Now Jade Cargill went from undefeated. What would have happened if she spent, maybe like an extra year in AEW after that? What would happen to her really? Or I would see Willow versus Athena, and I think that's another great video. I think that's what they need to do at Wembley Stadium. Willow versus Athena, and maybe Mark Briscoe versus Christian Cage or Jack Perry or somebody else really, or even John Moxley. So I should do a Wembley Stadium fantasy card for you guys. So so AEW had a really great show. What happened to them after 9 p.m. was very faulty and very rushed, really. So overall they're going in a good direction. Really, they still have their issues, but overall, really great show.